Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Cindra Kamphoff, author of Beyond Grit. Cindra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
I am ready.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I think the one piece of advice I would give them is to think about who you're writing this for. I was writing my book. It took a solid year, but there was about 3 months where I didn't write and I was stuck. And I wish at that moment that I had really been thinking about who would be reading it, who was I serving by writing it. And that's actually what helped me get unstuck, is I created a collage of pictures of people who I was writing it for. Anywhere from my current clients to prospective people I would want to read it, to my kids, to my dad and my parents. So that's one piece of advice, is always thinking about who you're writing it for to best serve them, and design the book around the idea about that.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
The hardest part, I think, is actually writing a publishable book that will make a difference. So for me, it wasn't actually about getting the book published, but it was more about writing in a really sticky way, adding my own voice and perspective, and then refining my ideas. And that did take some time and effort and reworking what I had. And that was the hardest part, I think it is, to get it published and really make an impact with your book.
Well, and I love that. And I think that's going to be the hook for this show, talking about writing a book that makes a difference, because that's the biggest thing. And my philosophy has always been with books is I always want to have the power of one. And that is, if I can impact one person with this book, then I know I've done my job. And it sounds like you have that same philosophy.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes when we think about, thousands of people reading it, it actually creates some anxiety for us. So if you just keep that in mind, one person or your avatar, right? Who are you writing this for? I think it also makes it easier to keep writing and not make it such a bigger thing that it is.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
The biggest thing that I did that really made a big difference was the date that I launched my book. I had an in-person launch party. So we made it a big event where I invited my current clients, my friends, my family members, and it was really fun. We had a band. People could buy the book there if they wanted. And at the same time, we coordinated an online launch. And it was incredible to have both of those, this live event where we created some buzz, we FaceTimed and Facebook Lived actually from this event. So a lot of people saw it, and it was on my social media. But then we also had this online launch. And so doing both the face-to-face and the online launch at the same time was really just created a lot of buzz for us. The best part, I think, was when I got home from that launch party, I had, Paul, several hundred orders that came through just in that time we were at the launch party that came through online. So it was really fun. I decided to send those myself. And so my mom and my dad, we were all around my kitchen table, and we stuffed books into envelopes. And I personally delivered those to the mailbox and to the post office. And it was just an incredible moment where my family could be a part of it. And we also built really incredible momentum by doing both of those together at the same time.
Nice. So in regards to those hundreds of books that were sold, they were from the virtual event, is that right?
Yes, they were from the virtual event, and then we sold several hundred also at the face-to-face event, but it was combining those together really did make a difference.
Excellent. Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
I have a lot of favorite books because I like to read, but if I could choose my favorite book, I would choose a book by Jack Canfield. And he wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Maybe you've heard of his name.
Oh, yeah.
But he wrote this one particular, and I actually have a podcast myself. It's called The High Performance Mindset, and just got the privilege of interviewing him, and that was really fun. But my favorite book that he wrote is a book called The Success Principles. And what I really like about that book is there are, something like 70 really short chapters, 3 or 4 pages in each of these chapters that really kind of dives into one particular topic. And before I started writing my book, I had that book by my bedside, and I would pick it up and I would read it when I needed a boost. And I would go to the table of contents and decide, all right, I really want to learn more about confidence today. And so I'd pull this out. And it became kind of my inner coach. And that's actually how I decided to write Beyond Grit, is I loved the structure of Jack's book so much that I decided that I wanted to write really short chapters. So my book, Beyond Grit, is 10 practices of the world's best. So 10 practices that the world's best have used. And we know they're based on research of these 10 practices, but then these 10 practices are divided into 52 short chapters. So when people need a boost, they can just open up the table of contents and say, hey, I want to read this one, or I want to reread this chapter. And so you don't necessarily have to read it front to back, but you could open it up based on what you need that day.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is, if your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough. And it is by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who was the president of Liberia from 2006 to 2018. And it's my favorite quote because so many times we kind of dream small. We don't really push ourselves to really think about what we can do and the possibilities. And I think as an author, that dream of publishing a book or publishing a second book or a third book can really be really scary. It can be fearful, but I think by embracing that your dream should be just a little bit scary, I think that's going to help you step into the writing and just even the decision to write the book. So your dream should be scary. They should be just a little out of your comfort zone, because then that means you're growing into who you can become.
Well, Cindra, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
You can head over to 2 places. You can find me, more information about who I am and the services I offer. I have a Beyond Grit Academy you might want to learn more about. And you can do that at Dr. Cindra, so DrCindra. And then you can find more information about my book and workbook at beyondgrit.com.
Dr. Cindra, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your time.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.